Welcome to the Night Ministries Street Medicine Facebook Live Q&A. I am Bethany Collins, Individual Stewardship Coordinator at the Night Ministry. I will be acting as moderator this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Street Medicine. In a nutshell, the Night Ministry's Street Medicine program brings free basic health care, survival supplies, and supportive services directly to Chicagoans experiencing homelessness. We have 3 members of the Night Ministry's Street Medicine team here to answer your questions about their work. If you're watching, please post your questions for them in the comments, and I'll read the questions out to the team to answer. Can the team members please introduce themselves and tell us what they do on the team?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sylvia. I am the case manager on the street medicine team, and I work with our clients to connect them to resources such as housing, social services, documents.
Hello, my name is Stefan Karuba. I'm the nurse practitioner on the street med team. And, our job is to connect people to primary care and to treat any acute issues that they have going on in hopes of keeping them out of the ERs and improving the overall quality of health.
Hi, I'm Noam. I'm the lead street outreach worker. So my role is to coordinate the schedule, the supplies, and make sure everything runs smoothly, and then build relationships with our clients.
We're going to start with a few questions that were submitted ahead of the broadcast. So first, what does a typical day look like for the medicine team?
So we don't typical days necessarily, because we try to cover the whole city over the course of a week, which is only slightly impossible. So typical day, we would have a morning shift and an evening shift, and the morning shift would stock up, so any kind of cold weather or hot weather supplies, depending on the season. Food, our medical care supplies, our harm reduction supplies, and anything else that we might need. So we have to stock up the van, and then we go out. Usually we have 3 or 4 stops planned, but then we also have a street medicine phone, so clients can call the phone and request medical care or case management. And so we try to community and then needs of individual clients as the day goes on. So it can be a little bit chaotic, but it's always a good time.
Yeah, and over the course of the day, if we encounter a medical emergency or someone who wants to go to detox or rehab, we tend to pretty much stop what we're doing at that point and transport those folks to those services. We feel they're that important, obviously. We do some other things to keep the team on the street instead of kind of sidetracking the whole team for one client. So sometimes we'll use an Uber. Sometimes we'll split the team up and have some folks go with the client and some folks continue on the run. So we try to kind of juggle a lot of balls.
And to add to the atypical, in the summer we add bikes to the fun, and we'll go out on bikes and with big backpacks filled with supplies.
Thank you all so much. So our next question, what types of health conditions do you see most often? How are they related to the conditions people experience living on the streets?
Well, because of the nature of being homeless and the how the affects that your overall health and immunity, we see a lot of infections, acute infections. We see pneumonia, bronchitis. We see wound infections, whether people are subjected to trauma, whether they get hit by a car, hit by a bike, in unsanitary surroundings, places where they can't stay clean and have control over their own hygiene. A lot of times those wounds will fester, and we can help them with antibiotics and wound care. We see all the typical things that people have in primary care. We see hypertension and COPD and asthma, high blood pressure. So all these different things that they don't stop because you lose the roof over your head. And our approach is to try and get folks a couple weeks of the medicine that they used to be on, whether we call it in whether we give it to them out of our stock supply, and then make sure they reestablish that connection to their primary care providers.
Besides healthcare needs, what are some of the common challenges faced by your clients, and how do you help them with those?
Our clients often lose their belongings, and along with those belongings, they lose their identifications, social security card, and in order for them to get to anything, whether it is to get into housing, to get to jobs, or anything, they need an ID. And it's very difficult for our clients to get an ID if they've lost them, because they might be from out of state, so then they need a birth certificate. So we help them with all those documents that they need to get to housing, that they need to get into medical care, and connect them with those resources.
I think from my perspective, I think a lot of our clients feel kind of isolated and separated from the rest of the city. So we're able to provide that human connection and just have a conversation. It sounds really basic, but just to spend 10, 15 minutes with someone can make a big difference.
So that's piggybacking on what Noam said, is that we are an outreach organization that was established in doing that, human connection being our goal, that then adopted a street medicine service platform. So our goal is to connect with people, to learn their stories, to let them know they're not invisible, and to be with them as they try to re-engage those services. When people get isolated, they're out on the street, and staying hidden and out of view is a protective mechanism for them. They get a lot of static from different parts of our society if they're seen and they're out there, so they withdraw. And then as they withdraw socially, they withdraw from the different connections and through the different, from the resources. So we have people who are deathly afraid of going into the ER, deathly afraid, and it'll induce a panic attack to walk in through those doors, even though they may have a condition that is life-threatening. So we work with them, we show them that we care, and then we will walk with them through those doors, and we will stay with them until they feel like they've got a handle on the situation and they've connected to somebody in that facility so they can get the care they need.
All right, I'm going to take a question from Anna now. Is it scary to approach homeless people? How do you stay safe?
I guess I never looked at it as a scary thing to approach homeless people, because homeless people is you and I minus a paycheck. Yes, we do safeguard by going out as a team, by going out in pairs. Obviously, we never know what we encounter, but I don't think that's directly related just to people who experience homelessness. You know, we could encounter a safety issue. And so, no, it's not scary. I mean, I think maybe the scariest thing is not to be fake when you approach somebody who experiences homelessness, because you want to be authentic, you know, and yeah.
So whenever I'm out on the shift, I'm typically the driver, and I think it's scarier to drive in the loop than it is to talk to someone who's unsheltered. That's my personal opinion, but I think that kind of fear, I definitely grew up with that, so I understand the question. But I think exactly like you said, the difference between myself and our clients is that I am lucky enough to be employed. So it's just having that human perspective. Yeah.
And having said that, there are the safety sort of precautions we take are we're always moving around in pairs, or we're within line of sight of other team members. We usually we know a lot of the people and have created relationships, so that's just like meeting an old friend or acquaintance. It's you know what they're comfortable with, and you respect that. For new folks, though, we'll greet them from quite a distance and give them a shout out, and then we'll read their body language and, hey, are they walking toward me or are they scrunching up their face and cursing? Well, in that case, you give them some space. So, yeah, there's definitely some things we do to make sure that we stay safe, but on the whole, it's just talking to people.
How difficult is it for a client to get permanent housing? How do you help people do that? And what happens after someone gets housed?
I'm going to start with the getting into housing and then let Noam take over at the afterwards. So we have somebody from Heartland Alliance go around with us twice a month and does housing assessments that gets them on a housing list. Once they're pulled off that housing list, which is they're matched with a housing provider, then the race is on to get all the documents, and that can be very difficult. It can be a long process, depending on how many documents they have, depending on, like I said before, where they're coming from, if they're from in-state, out of state. And then they have to go to appointments, have to apply for the unit, have to make it through that process. Sometimes we have clients that get denied, and once they're through that process, and then they go to a lease signing, and then they can move in, and we don't stop there. So that's where I'm going to pass it on to Noam.
So once we have a client in their permanent housing, we try to provide the basic supplies that anyone would need moving into a new apartment. So cleaning supplies, sheets, towels, hangers, just little things that kind of make you feel more at home. And then we also provide them with information about food banks that are close by and free resources, maybe stuff going on at the library. Because what we found is that a lot of our clients, if they've been living outside for a long time, that's their social support and that's their network. And so they might not necessarily know where else to go for social support or how to, make different friends or, get into support groups, anything like that. So we try to just get them to take the next step.
How do you decide where to go and whom to visit?
So we have a big whiteboard that lists 30 or 40 different locations, encampments that we try to see once a week. And sometimes we make it to all of them. Sometimes we don't. But like I said, we kind of respond to the needs of the community. So if someone calls and says, I have this wound, I need care right away, then we would probably go take care of the medical need. And then sometimes if we don't have a medical volunteer or Stefan, we would focus more on case management, social work side. So we would go check in with Sylvia's clients, maybe if someone's trying to get into permanent housing. But other than that, we have a couple stops that we do regularly, like Thursday morning is always Lower Wacker. Tuesday, we usually go to Pilsen. But other than that, it's kind of like we respond to the clients who need us the most. It's kind of triage, I guess.
Yeah, it's through our cell phone that we carry on the van with us. So they'll leave us text messages or voice messages. A lot of times we just pick up the phone if it's during one of our runs, and we plan to see them within the next day or two, depending on what their needs are. So sometimes they'll even get a message to us through Facebook or through a different route, but that's the most common way that we communicate with our peeps.
Or on the street. Sometimes when we go somewhere on the street, we're told, hey, so-and-so on that and that corner intersection needs help. And so we just kind of respond to it that way, too.
So you've started to answer this question, but how do you keep up with a transient population?
Using the cell phone, like we talked about, word of mouth as Sylvia said, is really a big part of it. Like last week, just being out there, I missed a gentleman I was looking for at the beginning of my day, and I ran into him totally accidentally at the last stop of the day in a totally different part of the city. So the fact that we're out there gives us a better shot because we spend, roughly 60 hours out on the streets a week. Plus, we're partnering with the other street med teams in Chicago, Rush, UFC, UIC, Northwestern's group, and they're all out there doing different parts of the city. We coordinate our cares with them, so if they're going out on a certain run, then we'll do it the week after them, so we'll kind of hip-hop. And then also it goes as far as they'll say, hey, I saw so-and-so on this corner, and they need a follow-up before I can get to them. Can you get to them? And then we work to try and facilitate that as well.
Yeah, the clients that I work with, especially if they are on the path to housing, I emphasize it to them that it's really important that I get a hold of them when certain things come up. So I ask them for multiple phone numbers, emails. I ask them where they stay, where they sleep, where they panhandle, and just so that I have as much information as possible in case I can't find them at one certain spot, that I can reach out to somebody else, and so just kind of have a lot of backups of backups.
Great. I've heard the term harm reduction used in conjunction with street medicine. What does it mean, and how does the night ministry practice it?
Okay, so harm reduction is a big umbrella term for a lot of different things. So harm reduction could cover, housing or getting someone into a shelter. It could cover us giving someone a sleeping bag or a coat when it's cold out. For us, it also involves giving out condoms, external and internal, HIV testing and linkage to care. And then we also provide harm reduction supplies in the form of clean needles and Narcan, which is a overdose reversing. Thank you. It reverses overdoses, so we distribute those for free, no cost, and also sharps containers so people can safely dispose of their needles. We've seen a lot of people who develop endocarditis or bad wound infections from reusing needles, and it can just cause a lot of health issues. So it helps to keep people alive and healthier for longer so that we can facilitate them getting into housing or getting into treatment, basically just keeping people as healthy as we can.
Yeah, some of those supplies that we offer, if we can keep a patient or a client from getting a lifelong illness or something that's going to take a lot of energy and money and resources to treat, like hepatitis C, then of course in the long run we're improving their quality of life. So we're looking at their current situation as changeable, as most probably temporary. Eventually they're going to get to a better housing status and a better place in their life. And when they do, we don't want them carrying endocarditis, heart issues. They can get sepsis from these wounds and die right there. So we're trying to save the patient and improve their quality of life, of course, but we're also in this regard saving the system a lot of input over the long haul. So.
What support can you provide for people with substance use challenges?
Well, we have a substance use counselor on the team. He's not with us here right now. We also provide transport to detox places. We have our harm reduction methods, as needle exchange. And anybody else?
The harm reduction model works well as it gradates into like an abstinence model. A lot of times in academia, they'll put the two as if they are diametrically opposed. At least in my experience, when we're out there, folks can use that substance, that harm reduction model, and as they rebuild those sort of connections that they need. They become aware of the resources that are available. They transition into detox rehab or methadone, which then becomes more of an abstinence model. So that's kind of, I feel the two things work hand in hand, and we see that on a regular. And then, our substance use advocate also, and the team as a whole works really hard to be with folks as we get them placed. We check in with them. We keep checking in with them as they transition from detox to rehab and rehab to more independent living. So we're just there at pretty much every step of the way, trying to make sure that they have as much support and as much of a chance of success. And also that they realize if they do relapse, it's okay on a very temporary basis. Like, everybody messes up. Doesn't mean that it's time to get and throw it all your success away and out the window. You get back on that horse, you get back out there, and we're there to try and make that as a short of a stumbling block as possible.
Yeah, and then just to speak to human connection, like, even if someone is using and they don't feel ready, or they don't want to stop, or they're just not in that place yet. Like, I've had clients say, I'm not ready to stop right now, or I'm not ready to go to detox right now, but when I am, I know that you're trustworthy and I can call you and you'll help me. So it's like, it's having a long-term perspective.
Could you share just one or two success stories?
Housing, yeah. Getting somebody housed is always a success story. We had a wonderful, sweet lady who had been homeless for well over 20 years, I believe. And I don't know if she ever thought that she would ever be housed. And we went there, and we decided to go out and do housing assessments in that area where she was staying at a tent site. And then she got matched right away, and we started the process of getting her documents. It was, I think, really easy to work with her because she was very much a go-getter and was on top of getting all her documents and everything. But it was just really sweet to walk her. That was my first one, so it was very special because of that. But it was really sweet to walk her through that process from being at the tent site, going to applying for that housing, and then getting in, and then moving her in, and we gave her a little welcoming gift. And it was little things like having a bathtub that maybe a lot of us take for granted that she has not seen in a long time, having a kitchen to cook in, and so it was just, it brought, as Noam said, that the humanity came out full, and it reminded me of how many things I take for granted, and just put it in perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the housing stories are always great. Like, myself and our peer advocate helped this guy move into his first apartment in 25 years. So if you could imagine living outside in Chicago for 25 years and then you get your own apartment, the emotions of that, it was really powerful to be there.
And a medical success story we've had. We had a client who had a very bad wound, and she became so distrustful of the medical community because every time she went in, she felt she was treated poorly. She has a substance abuse issue. They would let her detox and get dope sick, and they wouldn't treat her adequately, so she'd get ill, and she felt like they were dismissive to her and her needs. So she would leave, and that happened a couple times, and finally she just put up her wall and said, I'm not going in. I don't care if it kills me. And over the course of a couple weeks, it became very obvious that it was going to kill her, or at least make her lose the limb where the infection was. And it took a lot of talking, and it took a lot of time, but she finally consented to going into the ER, and we were like, yay, we got her to the ER, great, and we got her through the triage, and we walked away only to find out that she walked away as well because she had a panic attack and couldn't handle it and walked away. So a few days later, she was ready to try again, and this time we had a different member of our team stay with her all the way through the point where she got admitted. Once she got admitted, she got great care. They knocked the infection out of her wound. They're working on trying to get it grafted. And although she's back out, living on the street currently, she has that connection, and she has built up the ability to access those resources. And when you see this person now, she's not all bent over and like hiding. She comes up to you and says, hey, how are you doing today? And I was looking for you. And that is a very different dynamic than what it was before this whole thing happened. So yeah, she's in a better place, and that's definitely something I look at as being a huge win.
A question from Carol. When we see someone who needs your services, how do we connect them to the night ministry?
Do you have a card? I have a card. I don't know if this will get online or not, or if this is posted, but we give our cards out to everybody. Is that big enough online? I don't know. This is the cell phone number that we give all of our clients or people that we randomly see. We ask the folks out there, anyone who sees it, feel free to give this number to as many folks as who may need it and ask them to pass it out. So as they contact us, we'll try and figure out where they're at and how we can help them out. So.
And the number on that card, if anyone would like to save it, is 773-256-7549. Do you need volunteers? From Kathleen.
I think we always welcome volunteers. You can go to our webpage. There is a link on our webpage that links you to our volunteer coordinator, and they can kind of help you figure out where the best fit is for you to help out, and can take it from there.
Great, thank you. What more can people do to help? From Judy. Is it money and or items?
We practiced this one. So we're currently in transition from our current office to another office. So our storage space is a bit limited. We've projected that the current supplies, the physical supplies we have right now, will last us through the winter and into the spring. So at this point, the best things folks could do for us is to make a monetary gift and donation to us. What that allows us to do is when we fall short in a specific category, it allows us to address that directly and specifically. So that will always be welcomed. Come the change of seasons, in the springtime, rain gear, new tents. We usually use 3-person or 4-person tents to give out, but 2-person tents, if they're mildly used, lightly used, and still water resistant, are great. We'd use some water-proof tarps in the spring. And you just kind of think about, as the transition into summer, what's most important in summer. We're thinking hydration and sunblock and lighter weight gear like that, socks all year round. Fall, you get cold, so sleeping bags, hats, gloves, winter jackets, sleeping bags, all those good things. So it just kind of changes over the course of the year. Y'all have anything to add?
I would say if you have the extra funds and you wanted to contribute yourself, like when you're just out in the city, I would say bus passes are always really helpful, or the Chicago Cares program people really like, or even if you just get like a little $5 McDonald's card, $5 Starbucks card, just when the weather is bad and people can use that to just stay out of the weather. That's very much appreciated. Yeah.
Thank you all so much. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to the team for answering our questions. Thank you for all of you who submitted questions. And if you want to learn more, visit www.thenightministry.org. Goodbye.